Hi everybody, welcome to another Picture Perfect review. I'm Dom. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Suicide Squad. I won't get into too many specific details of the movie, but I will leave a minor spoiler warning here. The Suicide Squad is a sequel to Suicide Squad. It's kind of pitched as almost a remake, but it's definitely a sequel in my book. It's about a new group of characters who are hired by this woman, Amanda Waller, to basically work for the government and stop the world from being destroyed. It's a superhero movie. This movie stars Margot Robbie, Idris Elba, John Cena, Joel Kinnaman, Michael Rooker, Viola Davis, Nathan Fillion, Jai Courtney, and the list goes on and on and on. It was directed by James Gunn. Now, for those of you who don't know, the original Suicide Squad was released a couple years ago, and it was pretty much panned by everyone. I really didn't like it. If I had to rate it somewhere really quickly, I'd put it somewhere in the 4s. I did not like it one bit. I stand with David Ayer. I wish he could release his own cut. I don't know if Warner Brothers will ever let him do that like they did with Zack Snyder, but we'll see. This is sort of its own thing. It is a vast improvement on the original Suicide Squad. Right off the bat, you're made aware that this movie is going to live up to its name. There's a lot of characters and none of them are safe. Specifically, the first scene puts you right into the action. There's not a whole lot of exposition because, again, it's sort of a rehashing of the original story. It throws you right in and a lot of stuff happens very, very quickly. Despite there being a greater number of characters in this movie, I think a lot of them are better developed and understood both by the creator and the audience. The connections between them are a lot more established, whether that's through flashbacks or scenes of just a bunch of them together talking. You didn't really get a lot of that in the original, and I think that's where it fell flat. There's a lot of minor characters from the comics in these movies that you might not have heard of before, specifically someone like Polka Dot Man. We've seen Batman's parents get killed on screen 15 times in the past 3 decades, so it's nice to bring in a character, no matter how small, that's new and fresh to the series. A lot of the big characters have relationships with one another, specifically Idris Elba's Bloodsport and John Cena's Peacemaker. They bounce off each other a lot, whether it's in a friendly way or a competitive way, so I really enjoyed both of their characters together. Of course, there's Harley Quinn as well, played by Margot Robbie. To me, in this movie, she seemed like more of a bonus character. Now, I don't say that as a bad thing. What I mean to say is that a lot of times in this movie, she's on her own. She's not really working directly with the main Suicide Squad. And a lot of those scenes stand out. She doesn't need the other characters to further her development. Right now, she is DC's Stargirl. The more movies they shove her into, the better. There was a lot more development with Amanda Waller's character and the people working for her. I would love to see a sequel or a series about her and that relationship because we got a little bit of it in the first movie, but there wasn't a whole lot of closure. This one pushes it forward a little more, but still leaves you wanting more. Because of all this development, there are a lot more deeper, richer relationships that you build with these characters, despite the fact that in the universe, they're very minor people. You don't necessarily get to know them very well, but you want to. And I think that's what makes the Suicide Squad part of it a little tougher. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of characters in this movie die, and it's sad. And it's not sad because you already know who they are and you have that connection. It's sad because you want that connection and you don't get it. It seems like they're building it all up, and then they rip the rug out from in front of you and you fall flat on your face and you say, man, I wish we had seen more of that character. This isn't a bad thing in my opinion. A lot of movies, they underdevelop characters and they kill them off and you say, well, what was the point of that to the story? Every character in this movie has a point to the story. They all have something to give each other. They're sort of like ingredients in a dish and all together they're delicious, but when you take one out, you know that you're missing something. Now this movie is based around villains. It's based around anti-heroes, but because of all the death in this movie, it really makes you hate the big villains even more. When you're starting to see a character turn face and maybe turn to the good side, this villain comes along and destroys all that progress, and you just want to hate them. I will say this movie is a hard R rating. It's a lot of fun, but it is very gory. There was even a little bit of nudity that I was actually really surprised at. I have to say I haven't seen Birds of Prey, so I don't know how hardcore they go with that. But this movie is R-rated, and you should definitely know that going into it. To me, a lot of it seemed like not necessarily an homage or a parody, but a pastiche of old B-movie horror movies that you've seen from like the 50s and 60s. This movie is borderline horror at times. And if it wasn't for this cloud of humor hanging over the entire movie, there's certain scenes that I would have been genuinely unsettled by. It was very cool to see something like that, something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, sort of retranslated for a modern audience now in the 2020s. They had a lot of fun with the CGI and the storytelling, but I think a lot of it ended up being very predictable if you've seen some of these monster movies before. It's unfortunate that it took a little too much, in my opinion, but I don't think it necessarily made it a bad movie. I know this movie has been getting a lot of hype, a lot of good reviews, but unfortunately I think a lot of that comes from confirmation bias. A lot of people knew that James Gunn was directing this movie, and if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, if you've seen any James Gunn movie and you like them, you're gonna love this movie. It is classic James Gunn. I think a lot of people were quick to jump to, this is the best DC movie ever made. I don't necessarily agree. I think it was fun. I don't think it was the most fun I've had watching a movie this year so far. I don't even think it was the most fun DC movie I've seen. If you take it in the grand scheme of this DCEU, this extended universe, to me it seemed like more of a side quest. And more than that, a lot of the movie seemed like even smaller side quests. The movie starts off by telling you what the team needs to do to save the day. But in the process of getting there, they keep having to go to these other places to see these other characters. It seemed like a lot of little stories built into one. And I know you could say that about a lot of movies, but I think it was especially accurate with this one. The impact on the DCEU, to me, was probably very low. But does that make it a bad movie? Absolutely not. I honestly think the best viewing experience for this movie is to watch it on its own. To disregard everything we know about Warner Brothers and the DC Universe that they've managed to corrupt and destroy, and watch it as its own storyline. It was a good movie on its own. It had a lot of great laughs, a couple good twists, sometimes it was predictable. I'm going to give this movie a score of 7.3 out of 10. It wasn't nearly as cheesy as Aquaman, even when it was trying to be. Thank God. Guys, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you like my channel, please subscribe. And if you have any movies that you want to see me review, please comment below. And as always, if you like my art in the background, I will leave a link to my website in the description. Thanks for watching, everyone.